7 years and counting. Orange County's longest running community conversation with our community raconteur, RAAD GHANTOUS, the man who's everywhere, who knows everybody, and sooner or later talks about everything on our minds. I think that's the show.
I don't know if that was an encouraging way to actually make people excited about me reaching out to them, or for them to just run for the hills. I don't know which one.
Sooner or later, he drags them all in here.
I don't know how that's going to land. What's with the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce thing on the screen?
We got the wrong screen up.
Yeah, you got the wrong screen up.
Let's get the right screen up here. Here, we'll go back to your logo. And we'll get
so we are sorry, we are about 15 minutes behind schedule, but as happens with live radio, you have the added pleasure of seeing how the sausage is made sometimes.
Yes,
such as we don't have the right logo on the screen. But that being said, I also want to say that we had planned to have one of the OGs in the culinary scene in Orange County on the podcast today. Chef Pascal Olat was going to be on the show, and I also realized that he had a little bit of a tight schedule because he was at a UCI event at the UCI Medical Center of the city in Orange. So we will reschedule him. Fascinating gentleman, one of the real good guys out there. I had the pleasure of actually eating at his original Pascal's off Bristol when I was in design school, and then also the I think I can't remember the name, was it Jardin? I think it was at the Sherman Gardens in Corona del Mar, again around in the sort of early 90s, and he has been a really prominent fixture of the Orange County culinary scene. Mentored many of the who's that are out there. Him and Chef Bruno in Anaheim and Zov are three of the four pillars of the Orange County.
Have we ever had
culinary scene.
Zov from Zov's Bistro on?
I believe we've had Zov on one time, and it was a remote, and it might have been during COVID. We've had Bruno on.
Bruno Serrato, yeah, Sir Bruno Serrato.
Sir Bruno Serrato, and so I'm working on something. I'll keep you guys in suspense. I'm trying to work on something that may include all of them. Again, Chef Pascal was going to be on, and we will reschedule him because he has a very fascinating insight, as far as I'm concerned, regarding how was the Orange County culinary scene, especially with a French chef like himself in the mid 80s when he basically, I think, or even early 80s when he first started.
It was bleak back in those days.
Yeah, I think I heard somewhere that Orange County culinary scene was considered a sort of a drive-through kind of
Yes.
options. That's pretty much it. Did you want your McDonald's or Burger King's or whatever? But and probably those items on the menus today are about the same price as what fine dining would have been in culinary.
Yeah, right. Well, look at all the Orange County. People don't realize Orange County is a headquarters for fast food companies.
Right.
I believe, isn't Pizza Hut here?
I believe so. Yeah.
And Taco Bell.
Just Sit Up is here right off Main Street.
Johnny Rockets.
Rockets. Yeah. Ruby's.
Yeah.
So anyway, but Chef Pascal, again, like I said, he's been very had a very positive impact on a lot of up and coming talent in Orange County. He encouraged a lot of them. He was very, there's some people that are just there for people, and he always has struck me as a person who's just there to support everybody, and a very positive gentleman, and that was very instrumental, I think, in him, trying to navigate through a couple of situations where he had cancer and had a rare type of blood cancer, and UCI was one of the very few places where he could actually get the kind of treatment that he needed. And I believe at the end he had maybe a reoccurrence and ended up with a stem cell transplant from his daughter, who was in France.
There's a story.
So definitely would like to have him come in and talk about that. I also wanted to pick his brain, kind of see where he thinks because he has that perspective, that vantage point of being involved since the mid 80s or early 80s in the culinary scene in Orange County. Have we evolved to a point where, given the time we've had, or are we still a work in progress? Have we slipped maybe a little bit, and then also the challenges, especially in the food and beverage industry these days. He's had restaurants, he does private dining and catering. He has a location now in San Juan Capistrano, which is near me in South County. So again, one of those sort of iconic living icons in Orange County, and glad to see him up and about.
I'm going to
and
say that
actually
we
doing
probably, I don't think we've slipped. In fact, I think we've gone up a couple notches in the last few years, partly because of your friend who opened the camp in Costa Mesa.
Shaheen Sadeghi and Linda Sadeghi and Sebastian, I believe, Sadeghi was on one of the
He
other
was
shows.
on
the
our real estate show
Yeah.
talking about that. And
so shout out to the Sadeghi family.
and then the Grove. Is the Grove? What's the...
The packing house.
The
you're
packing
thinking
house,
about,
I'm sorry,
and,
packing
yeah,
house,
culinary, which is a real.
And
like,
one of those
amazing
just got a
experience.
Michelin star. There's a Hispanic restaurant there,
In
a
there.
Mexican restaurant.
Yeah, in there that did that. Yeah, so I agree with you, Paul. I think we have definitely done that. The tough thing about Orange County, I find sometimes, is that we're very spread out.
Yeah, clearly.
So people don't necessarily, or didn't know, for example, about the, La Vie en Rose that used to be in Brea, or the
there's an old one, yeah.
the cellar that's in Fullerton, that's
Right.
at the old California Hotel building. Pascal's was right off, like I said, right off Bristol, amazing, and now the same location, which I find to be very serendipitous, the same location that Pascal was in, and where he really kind of started this whole movement back in the 80s, is now Moulin. Which is,
okay.
and then Moulin also opened another location next door, which is more of a restaurant setting than a sort of a bistro, and that one used to also be, I think it might have been La Traditionnelle, I'm not sure, but it was also one of Pascal's restaurants. So the two locations that Pascal was in, right off Bristol, in Newport, are now Moulin. And similarly, so there's sort of this sort of riding on the shoulders of giants. And Moulin, if you don't know, Moulin has a location in Dana Point, in San Clemente, in Laguna, which I believe Laguna might have been the original one. I believe there is, I want to say there's maybe another one, but I'm not sure location. But the point is that sometimes, especially with the speed of how things move in California, and we're all about the new and what have you, we sort of lose that history, that legacy, that sort of the original mavericks and innovators and different things. Another one that we've had on the show was Bill Bracken, who's after fine dining and high-end hospitality, is now basically very instrumental in tackling hunger. And
Bill was just in here last week on the new show from South County Outreach.
Oh, okay.
He's
So
a partner of theirs in their food banks, and then he was on.
I know who that gentleman is. It's Laval, right?
Yeah, Laval Brewer.
Yeah, Laval Brewer. So a shout out to Laval and Bill, and they're both friends. And Laval is going to be on the show coming up. He's out of town right now this week, and we got him lined up. I've got Jenny Denon, who's also very involved in Orange County. And sort of a family legacy in terms of what she does and what her focus is right now. She's going to be on, I believe, next week. But again, the point of having somebody like Chef Pascal on is to also remind us of what it was like, where we are, and where we could still be going. Did we make it? Did we not make it? Very positive, like I said, gentlemen, and we all could use a bout of that these days. Similarly, we have things that we're tackling in Orange County, kind of like an offshoot of the restaurant business, where affordable housing, for example, right? And the ability for people that are workers or employees in these food and beverage facilities or service industry, where they could actually afford to live close enough to where they can work and continue to provide service. In nursing, caregivers is a similar thing. It's sort of these sort of vulnerable populations because of our, blessed increase in price of real estate and value and how of homes and stuff like that, but we also have an equally aging population. We have different financial realities on people where there, I think it's right now it's like 1 out of 5 that's like 65 or older. I'm not looking at Paul necessarily for any reason because I'm not that far behind. But things like that where we are facing more challenges than just whether we are our food options are drive up or fine dining with tablecloths. We're facing other challenges that, looking at some of these sort of pillars that have faced challenges, including personal ones like medical challenges and the importance of community. Like, I think Chef will probably even tell you that he was very much, he won't probably tell you that he was very much there for everybody, but he was for a lot of people that were especially in that industry. And when he needed that support, from what I have read and what I have heard and what I've seen people, coverages, and he probably will tell you himself that the support of the community, the support of his students, he teaches at Saddleback College, the support of people that were former employees or worked for him or trained under him, those all came out. And it sort of begs that question, is like what you put out boomerangs and comes back at you. So kind of be careful what you put out. But at times when we're challenged as a community, because we now have vulnerable populations, whether it's some people that are homeless, and hey, listen, homeless is not necessarily only a choice. I mean, you got seniors that are maybe one medical bill away from being homeless. Okay, I mean, let's just take the wool out of our eyes and really look at some of these circumstances. And the fact that we are blessed and have that affluent standard of living, affluent environment in which we live, but it also puts the burden, I think, and responsibility on municipalities and cities and us as a community as a whole to work together towards solutions that are sustainable, that don't necessarily take away from what we have achieved, but also add a layer to where we are supporting these people. And listen, I've said this before on the show, Paul has heard me saying before, the reaction to things like affordable housing or equity and inclusion is that, well, not in my backyard. No, I don't want that.
Yeah, do it over there.
I don't want that that beautiful Spanish revival, tenement housing that looks like, in my mind is the projects.
I don't want a sober living home in my neighborhood.
I don't want a sober living home or a group home in my home. No, sober living, I can understand that, although again, it is a vulnerable population. These are people that have lived and worked in our communities that for that moment in time maybe are dealing with that. Now, does that system get abused? Do people basically look at it from a financial perspective? And does the community have then the responsibility of proper enforcement and rules and guidelines? Absolutely. But to just paint things with a wide paintbrush because it's, again, outside our comfort levels, like I said, affordable housing, then basically what you do is you ostracize not only, for example, people that are in the service industry that may be not necessarily born and raised in those communities, but people that are born and raised in those communities that are starting families, that are starting careers, that can't afford to actually live in the communities in which they have a DNA connection, that they can continue to contribute and they have a vested interest in maintaining the nature of that community, seeing it flourish. Hell, potentially even run for office in that community because they are now second generation and third generation in that community, and they kind of not only know where the bodies are buried, but they also know what the spirit of the community is. And instead what you have is you now have people that are willing to step up and serve, but that don't necessarily have that DNA connection with the community that
came from somewhere else, right?
Yeah, right. So then you look at and say, well, how come the nature of the communities is changing? How come these communities are not longer, have the sort of the quaintness and the caliber that I basically was accustomed to living here, raising a family in? So these things have a ripple effect. And it's important to bring on people that are actually a reminder for us that we don't have to, it's not an either or, it's an and.
You always say that it's not an either or, it's an and, or your other analogy of the quilt and the straws, or the strings rather, in the quilt.
Yes, all those fabrics, all those fibers make for and the more fibers you have, by the way, the more sturdy and
The
more
garment.
and more stable the garment, right?
Yeah, right.
So and so
And colorful.
so that diversity is a strength, and you'll see me say this, and I believe it wholeheartedly. I have experienced it in my life on every continent that I've lived on. Diversity is strength. Now, is there a fear of the not the unknown, the fear of the not like me? Sure, absolutely, that's human nature. But the thing what you do about fear is you basically don't feed the animal. You actually basically curtail it. You actually, dissuade it. You inform yourself. You educate yourself. And part of that is having these conversations. Part of that is having people
So one
on
of the
that
things
will
that's
remind
unique
us.
about you and this show, for those just tuning in, is that it's often a long conversation. It's not a quick presentation. Here, this guest, here's your resume. Thank you. Next week we'll bring you another guest and we'll introduce you to somebody else. It's conversation with them, because one of the things I
Well,
learned,
I have been accused of taking the long road, and you know what? I am proud of it.
yes, sometimes I'm going, where is this going? But one of the things that this reminds me today, we titled this community conversation, because where, how, when do we have a community conversation? And I'll give you a couple examples. You were a loud voice for those fighting the toll road. And for a long time I said,
How
give
did
it
that
up.
work out, people? We talked about it. We made T-shirts about it, but more importantly, we really addressed it.
Yeah.
And there are people that I consider friends that were basically on opposing sides of this thing. And in fact, we also found common ground on other things. So just because we are divided by a particular issue or have an opinion that varies from people that are around us doesn't mean we shut those people out. And unfortunately, we live in a society right now where it's like, I'm just going to paint you with that one position on that one issue, and I'm going to stop talking to you
Going to unfriend you.
because you don't have anything. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to unfriend you. I'm going to block you. I mean, I think I saw this thing about where you're like, now you block celebrities because they're not basically feeling in the empathy that you need them to feel at the same time.
Yeah. So what reminded me is I was always beating you up because you're the last piece of the toll road that got built. Along the way, they went through where I lived, Rancho Santa Margarita, and right behind
Here we go. You're going to see
Tesoro High
you're going to
School.
hear the bitterness in Paul's voice.
and
right
we
now.
didn't stop anything.
That they didn't stop a damn
We
thing.
didn't
But
do anything.
San Clemente,
Boom.
we stopped it.
You stopped it. So because you banded together and had community conversations, where there is no town square anymore, there is no a place where we all gather and debate things or even discuss things, or the pubs where we used to, share a pint in Ireland and have these stories. I don't know where the community conversations are happening, and therefore our communities are changing, and many people don't like it, and we don't. All we do is just throw our hands up and try and block everything.
You know, Paul, I'll tell you another layer to this, which is you just made me realize. Not only was it was almost an anemic drip of like when it happened.
Yeah.
And you almost needed to put it on your list of to-dos as being something that's important. Otherwise, your honey-do list or your list of to-dos is so long that you would never get to it.
How they built the toll road. Couple miles here, that's it. Couple more, maybe that's it. Couple more, and pretty soon it's all the way knocking on.
Let me
door.
tell you why. And this is the thing that's interesting. People look at an election, for example. I'll just use this as sort of a timestamp example. People look at an election and all they can think of is the vote and the election.
That minute.
They don't think about what happens the day after.
No.
People run for office and they basically promise you the stars, the moon, and the sky, and then they don't realize that at some point when they get into that seat, they're now going to have to play by certain rules that the people that they were whining about also had the best intentions but ended up having to play by those rules. We don't do well past the hurrah moment, the aha moment, the got you moment. What happens the next day? What do you like? I'm going to have that party and I'm going to get drunk, and then what happens the next morning? You got a massive hangover and you are useless for 3 days.
And I'll give you a classic example.
Well,
of that.
hold on a second, right? Hold on a second. So the thing about these conversations, the thing about the toll road, we stopped the toll road in San Clemente. Had we not stopped the toll road in San Clemente, Paul, with all the modifications and developments that are happening in the harbor in Dana Point, that is not even a Dana Point city project. It is a community, it's a county project.
Right.
All that massive development that's happening there, the added development that just happened or got approved this week, which was the apartments that are now going to get built on a lease of the property that is owned by Capstone Unified School District, where the buses used to be parked, which is right off the exit on Beach Cities. Where do you think all that traffic would have had to go? It would have gone to San Clemente, through San Clemente to get on the toll road.
Why they wanted it there.
Right? We already knew what the traffic congestion looked like with the beach cities as it is on the weekend. Anybody who wants to go down San Diego, come down through San Clemente, and you'll find out how long it will take you to go through there. So all of that traffic, they were willing to channel through a historic town that is quaint with a defined and built out footprint. You know what? Put the toll road through Dana Point. Put the toll road through Laguna Niguel. But no, they're through San Clemente. And you know what? We stopped it. And in doing so, we saved the character of the town. And what's happening now? All the value of the property in San Clemente is going through the roof. Why? Because you have a place that still holds its character.
Right.
That still demands that if you're going to have something come through the town, that solution needs to be appropriate for us, custom tailored for us. Don't throw something you did up north into our community just because it's convenient.
So I don't want to be too controversial, but you brought up the Dana Point Harbor thing. We've been trying to get people in to talk about that. We did have Bob Olson in here on one of our shows about a year ago, and he's develops big hotels.
Yeah, Bob is one of the developers that's involved in the project.
He's involved in the project. He's not the core developer.
Yeah.
But and so they came in and just talked about on a real estate show about the advantages of updating this harbor. It's old and it's and they're going to have bigger.
You mean like where they just raised the prices on all the slips yesterday?
So they did.
In order to edge out all the people that have been basically parking their boats there.
And a lot of people are upset because
and they
they've had
didn't
boats there for 20 years or 30 years, little mom and pop kind of boats, sailboats, maybe some of them are rickety
By the way,
boats.
they used the example. They said, this is the other thing. They used the example to justify the rent increase by comparing it to comparable places in Lido and Newport.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't compare it to Oceanside Harbor, right? So and again, look, for what I do and what I have done for the better part of 20 years, you can consider it construction and development, right? Improvements. I'm not against that at all, but the word appropriate and fitting is also important. To redo that harbor, and I've lived in San Clemente since '87, so to redo Dana Point Harbor, not a problem at all. To improve the offerings in Dana Point Harbor, not a problem at all. I think it's really great that would be done, but in the spirit of that harbor in Dana Point, not in the spirit of doing a gigantic thing down there for mega yachts. But that's what's happening down there.
And my point of telling the story isn't to pick on Bob or the harbor or anything, because I really don't.
No, that's
know
what their
about
business is. It's not the developers, Paul. It's the responsibility of the community, as in the municipality, the county. That we have a death wish to basically maximize return in the immediate, and kick the can down the road for future impact. We do this with politics, we do this with development, we do this with all kinds of things, education. We don't think down the road. We think, what is my quarterly return maximum today? Not what happens in 10 years. Okay, and so that's, again, I come back full circle. That's why it's important that we are not only talking to the people that are the innovators that are thinking today, but we are also talking for people and taking advantage of that sage wisdom of people that have been around long enough to also tell us about what the journey was like and what the path was like, and whether some of the decisions that were made were worth it, or if they had to do them again, would they do them differently with the impetus on what the long-term effect would have been.
And my only point is, many of these things happen without either a long-range community plan. Dana Point has they have a 20-year plan, but I think it's way outdated or something here. These things were drawn up a long time ago.
What they call
master plans.
Master plans, yeah.
And so they put these documents in place and they put them in a drawer somewhere. They don't update them, and they don't have a community conversation. Is this really what you want? Is it you were going to go? So what happens is,
Well, you got to ask yourself, do they really want one,
I don't know, because that's the point.
or
Because
does it just complicate the process
I think
if
that's
they have one?
part of it. If and I'm not going to disclose, but I could give you information examples where other agencies have come in here and said we really like to keep it quiet because then we can just kind of go about
Yeah.
what we think is best,
Yeah.
and nobody complains. But the point I always make to these groups is, whether it's developers or agencies or whatever, the toll road agencies and all this stuff is, without a conversation, then you get knee jerk. You often get knee jerk reactions. Stop. No. End. Don't do this. Huntington Beach, when they tried to build some high-rise apartments there in the town, a bunch of people got up in anger. We don't want high-rise and now it's become the calling card of the whole administration. We had Tony Strickland in here. No, he's going to fight not just affordable housing, he's going to fight anything that goes up. We want Huntington Beach to always stay. It's not going to be New York or San Francisco or whatever. We're not going up. And yet
in San Clemente, when somebody came by and basically tried to do a 5-story building or like go up multiple levels in the downtown area, we basically said we don't want to be Huntington Beach. So again, it's interesting because but to your point, every single community has its own quirks. It has its own, political agenda. It has its own, financial, economic engine. And I totally get that real estate development, for example, or some of the more traditional economic engines in Orange County, right, have been very instrumental in the growth of the county.
Clearly.
Right? We're also not 40 years ago. Our population is also changing. You've got less people that are going to school in the last 10 years, so they mothballed a bunch of primary schools.
Right.
But now you've got a lot more people that are millennials that are they having kids? Or there's got to be a little bit more than a knee-jerk reaction in some of this stuff.
Well, you talked about the famous hospital project. I don't know whatever happened with it, where they shut down the community hospital. It was acquired by a bigger hospital group.
They shut down our local hospital
in San
because
Clemente.
It was financially non-viable, and they basically shut it down. It was purchased, shut down. It was going to get torn down, and it was going to be turned into call them concierge medical services.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the second story would have ocean views, and they would basically get a lot of rent for those, right? It got turned down. It finally got turned down, but for about 10 years, it stopped. There was nothing happening in there, all I can think of, with my parents were getting older and basically ailing, was that the difference of 5 or 10 minutes on the freeway to get them to Mission could be the difference between
or
life
more
or
in
death.
rush hour or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. And I remember that conversation for two reasons. One, because they struggled to have a community conversation. And I'll say to the city's benefit, they did approach me several times because they had public hearings. All these things had public hearings, and nobody would show up, or only the same angry mob would show up. And they were trying to really figure out, how do we repurpose and reuse this asset? It's already here. And can we find a way as a community to help the developer, not just shut it down? And apparently that never worked. That it was too hard to gather people and have a long-range vision conversation.
Well, that goes back to leadership.
And then,
But that goes to leadership, Paul.
Maybe.
I mean that's the thing. Well, no, because part of leadership is sometimes to be the conveyor and the educator on a particular topic, and to actually allow for those varying opinions. I think some people do it just better than others. That's all. I mean, it's like
Maybe.
It's a human condition, right? I think when you have a situation like that, it's kind of like, let's just talk about something that's kind of relevant right now. It's all those protests on campuses, okay? So he's like, why are you shifting from one thing to the other? Well,
here he goes again.
Well, yeah, protests on campuses, right?
Right.
Those were opportunities. Some of the campuses did better than others on this, right? Because some of the campuses, the actual administration took advantage of that situation to encourage dialogue,
Right.
and actually engage in that. And they did it early enough that it caused for a lack of pressure building in that pressure cooker, where nobody's doing anything other than burying their heads in the sand and said, well, hopefully it'll go away tomorrow when I show up, right? and they were able to navigate that
Or crack
space.
heads and
Right,
force it to go
right,
away.
right. But when you don't do that, when you don't run towards it, but you run away from it, or you try to bury your head under the table and say, no, this is not happening, it'll go away tomorrow. It's kind of like, oh yeah, okay, COVID will be over in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Then you basically are scrambling, and now you're open to whatever comes your way, whatever special agendas and special interests start to leverage that situation and try to take advantage of it. Right. I think we need to basically embrace an idea, and I'll tell you, I'm doing something personally on this matter, right? But we need to embrace the idea that we dare to aspire to new heights instead of just accept the mediocre as what it is. And I'm not
talk
talking
about it. We can talk about it without killing each other here. We can discuss difficult issues in a way that has real dialogue and not just shouting at each
well,
other.
hopefully we've gotten to such an extreme of where we're not doing that,
Yeah.
that we're kind of sick and tired of the results that happen when we don't talk and we don't sit down and allow for that. You know, it's really funny. You know, you got pushback against diversity and inclusion, right?
Big time.
There's pushback against diversity and inclusion and equity, right?
Certainly on the right, yes.
Yeah. Well, but let's just think about it beyond, like, inclusion, diversity, and equity in a conversation. Inclusion, diversity, and equity on varying opinions on a topic, right? Everybody's screaming bloody murder about how their position is not being heard while they're denying everybody else's.
Yeah, right.
On all sides,
Right.
right? So is it any surprise that we basically have an issue with diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah. People love to comment on cancel culture and the feeling that, we can't talk about anything. I can give you 100 things that you can't talk about to somebody on the right, abortion or other sorts of things.
I
But we
think,
can't talk about that.
I think it's equal on the other side, though, with
and
different topics.
on left-wing topics,
Yeah.
yes, you do.
Yeah.
So you got groups that point to the other and say, you are against free speech. You won't let people have a conversation. And then I say, okay, maybe that's true. How about if I talk to you about this hot button issue for you? Oh, don't talk about that. That's we cancel anybody that discusses that. Anybody that brings that up, they're out of our group. We can't. We won't allow any conversation.
Yes, and you've had people removed from different positions, jobs,
on both sides.
on both sides
On
because
both
of what you just
sides.
described, because it conflicted with somebody else's take on something.
When Liz Cheney gets kicked out of the Republican Party, basically because she won't accept, she denies that the election was rigged and lost, and vociferously fights back in that thing. One of the most conservative, steady voices of the conservative cause, she gets canceled because she won't accept the position of others that this was.
And I got to see her. So just a shout out to something that I experienced for the first time this year was there's this thing called Distinguished Speaker Series, and the new tickets are now out for the end of this year through next year's
Is that the Newport
series.
Beach Library?
No. This happens at the Long Beach. I think it's the Performing Arts Center,
Okay.
right off Ocean. And I just saw Thomas Friedman last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Why don't you bring me? Yeah. Let's get Tommy on the show.
So now he wants in. So Tom Friedman was on. He was great.
Fascinating
He
guy.
was great. Yeah. Long time. I followed him for a long time.
Writer for the New York Times.
Well, he was
and-
stationed in Lebanon. He was there. One of his best friends was actually the president of the American University of Beirut, which is where my father went to.
Didn't know that.
And he was assassinated. That guy was assassinated. And yeah, and Thomas Friedman is. It was really refreshing to see him speak.
He talks about how the Earth is flattening. I forgot what's the title of his book, something like that.
Yeah, the Earth is flat, or the flattening of the Earth, or something like that.
The idea
which is it's everything is level.
right.
Yeah, but
And connected.
But I also the first person I saw in that series this year was Liz Cheney, and
Bring her on here.
well, I'll reach out and see if she will come in. But she is a very smart lady, and I will respect her for forever for basically taking a stand. And she, to your point, was literally, she paid the price for that. If that party was the slightest intelligent, they would have run that woman for president,
Oh,
right? Because that she would have bridged a lot of people, and especially for that Senate, that would have been an asset.
and who
for
could
her.
see it coming? The daughter of Vice President Cheney, who was
I mean that she's a Republican Party. What do they call those? Not legacy. It's like a royalty.
yeah, she was part of the royal,
Republican Party royalty.
and she represented a party that has now gone.
No,
That's been totally replaced.
That party doesn't exist. I mean, I voted for Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan. I'm sorry, Republicans will disagree with me. Ronald Reagan would never get elected today
No.
by the Republican Party.
Never.
But neither will John F. Kennedy by the Democrats.
Ronald Reagan used to famously say, "What do you call somebody who agrees with you only 70% of the time? A friend, an ally."
Yeah.
Now we call him an enemy.
Yeah. We don't even talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We send them an ugly meme on Facebook or something, or Instagram, or
We cancel them.
we cancel them. So that being said,
So how do you have?
we need people that can maintain their positivities through challenges, and it could be something as mundane or as seemingly non-controversial as food and beverage or art or something like that, to remind us constantly, to remind us that the minute when we close the door and we do a cancel culture, or we only live in our silos or what have you, we pay a price. We pay an ultimate price, and it may be kind of a death by death by a thousand cuts, but we pay a price over a long period of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wonder what these communities will look like. Will they just become homogenized, and all Republicans live here and all Democrats live here, state by state, county by county, city by city?
It's kind of happened. I mean, people will gravitate to certain places now because they'll be surrounded by people that only agree with them.
Right. Didn't we have a name for that when other countries, when they violently did it, called ethnic cleansing, where we're kidding those people out and it's only our people that are here? And so I don't know how the democratic model survives that kind of isolation, that kind of lack of community conversation. If we're all nodding our head and we're all in agreement, that's why we live here, we're all of a certain faith, we're all of a certain color, we're all of a certain persuasion, and that's us, then the idea is it's easy to get consensus because we all came here for that purpose. And maybe that's why some people moved to Orange County, because they wanted to be a pretty little suburb, or they wanted to be white picket fences, or we all had a vision of what that community was, and we all gravitated. But as communities grow and get diverse, why does that dialogue break down?
Well, speaking of dialogue, can you check and see if Chef Pascal's trying to get on with the Zoom? Is there a way of doing that while we're on the air?
Yeah.
Okay, let me, because I see him, he's trying to call me on Facebook. Let me check with him and see if he's on Zoom. At least we can say hello. Or Zoom.
I'll open up Zoom. So I'd like to suggest that sometime you put on an ad through your massive social media, we'll do the same, and we have a true community conversation. Open the phones up and let people call in. And
We've tried to do that with open mic, and if anybody
never worked well.
Well, because we've kind of done it, but let's put it out there, right? Let's put it out there. We just said, whatever you put out, you get back.
Right.
So hopefully we won't get a lot of hate mail back after
Right.
this, but let's put it out there. Like, if you guys are interested in having, this goes to the older listeners, if you're interested in having a community conversation,
Right.
it could be open mic. We could do it where it's an advanced topic, or we could do it where we just open it up and let you guys basically, bring whatever you're
Or
thinking
let us
about.
know what the community wants to talk about.
You know who does that? That's that is it C-SPAN?
Uh-huh.
What's that channel? Is it C-SPAN that basically gets calls, and it's like there's two telephone numbers, and one's like from the Republican side and one from the Democratic side, and they call in on the lines. Well, we have a telephone that will work.
Yeah.
So
Remember
says,
telephones?
So says Paul. I've never heard it ring.
Remember telephones?
Okay.
Right.
And we can definitely try to do that if you have an interest in it. Let us know. And
But it means
I'm more than happy to do that.
It means more than ranting, though. It's got to mean that you're willing to state.
Well, we reserve the right to
position.
basically cut you off if you rant. I mean, and what I mean by that is where all you're doing is grievance dumping.
Right.
If that's what you're interested in doing, then no. If you're interested in having a conversation about something that maybe differing points of view are known for it, or we, individually here. I mean, I don't agree with this guy all the time. Half the time
What?
I'm basically looking at him saying, "What the heck are you doing?"
What?
Right. But
I'm always right.
But I would love to have that, and I think we deserve as a community, as a community in Orange County that's becoming more sophisticated, maturing, if we want to use that word lightly, becoming more seasoned, and we are aging. We're getting older, right? So
Yeah.
maybe we're getting wiser too.
There's a
Maybe we should
conversation,
have
for
that
example,
conversation.
nobody has. So I am in my 60s. And as you pointed out in your previous versions of the show over the years, these communities are rapidly aging. And we don't know what that means. What does it mean for transportation? What does it mean for availability of housing? Because we're not dying, we're not leaving, but we're getting older. So we're going to need more services, and we're going to need a different transportation system, and we're going to need more hospitals and all these things. I don't know that anybody's having that conversation. Therefore, we're not planning for those things until they hit us in the face.
And what you, a healthy 60-some-year-old, how old are you, Paul?
Do I have to give my
Yes,
answer?
yes. How old are you?
I'm 68 now.
Okay, so you are 10 years older, or you're 10 years more seasoned than I am. and that I use very questionable language to describe, but
Spicier.
but he's spicier than I am. But you're 10 years older than I am.
Right.
Okay? No disrespect, but what you consider to be appropriate housing for your golden years is probably something I don't want to be part of.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're not even having that conversation. I mean, I've just put out something on LinkedIn this week or last week about just Gen X, which I am, first year Gen X, and baby boomers, and just the different needs for housing. So when we're basically now all of a sudden waking up and saying, oh, yeah, we know we have an aging population, and we are going to have to provide for people that are older that maybe want to scale down, scale down their work, but they're not slowing down. They're not compromising. But they may be scaling down their residences. Are we also thinking about the fact that those residences may be good for the baby boomers, but not necessarily the Gen Xers down the road? Are we building in the flexibility in how we're handling our
No.
aging housing? Or
You worked on that for years.
I mean, listen. Don't call me a senior, and don't no disrespect for seniors, but call me a seasoned adult. There's that language again. Like
Yeah, we went through that for years. What do you call us? I used to be a hippie,
So it's
and then I was a yuppie, and now I'm
And
a...
it took us almost 2 years, and then one day Paul walks into the studio and he goes, I've got it. And I
Yeah.
go, what do you got? I completely forgot what we were trying to do, actually, at that point, right? And he goes, well, remember, we were hippies,
Yeah.
and then we were yuppies,
Yeah.
and then he found what it was that they became, and what was that?
We're poopies.
Poopies. And what was poopies?
Pissed off old people.
Right. There you go. Now, there was an election going on at the time, so that may have had something to do with his anger. But yeah. And if a Gen Xer had called boomers poopies, it would be the end of me. But it was a boomer who called boomers poopies.
I'll give you a classic example of this. So I inherited a number of years ago, as anybody who listened to the show before knows, when my late father died now 10 years ago, and my mother before that, they moved out from the Midwest to live what they thought was the ultimate dream in the sun and fun of Palm Springs area, Palm Desert, and they moved to a sun city. There were sun cities all over the country being thrown up, where you come and you live this idyllic kind of senior life. You play golf all day and tennis. And
The Del Webb communities.
The Del Webb communities.
Yeah.
And this was the ideal vision. So I kept the home, partly because I love it, on the golf course and all this stuff, and has a pool. And I thought, this is going to be a great investment, because when my generation gets ready to start doing it, these are going to be in demand. They can't build these communities fast enough. They're going to do it. And instead, my wife and everybody else goes, I'm not living out there. I'm not living in some old leisure world style community here. I'm not going to just give up and play mahjong. And
So what are you doing with that now? Is it rented?
I rent it out.
So who's renting it?
The people, oddly enough, Canadians mostly, who come down for the season, and I get enough money to support the payments through the rest of the years. In summer, it pretty much sits empty, except sometimes people come out who are thinking of moving to the area and see how bad is bad, and they rent it in the summer. Right now,
So it's a vacation rental.
it's a vacation rental
Right.
home. So, and that's a hot market. So that does well, but it was pivoted. The investment value of it isn't because baby boomers are lining up to load up their station wagon or their minivan. I'm going dating myself, and drive out to the desert and live that life.
So let me ask you this: you're a baby boomer.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you're obviously not living in the desert.
No.
And I'm sorry, folks, but this is the nature of this show. I'm going to go down rabbit holes as it comes out. Right.
All
So
right.
here's.
We'll go a few more minutes because we were late.
Listen,
Right.
it's my show, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go down a rabbit hole if I choose to. So okay. So where do you live? I mean, you don't have to give me the address. You just give.
I live in South County. It's on the edge of Ladera.
So are you in a house in a town? In a house.
Yeah.
Okay. So
a starter house, really, a house that was designed for starter families. We bought it as a starter house, and we never moved up to the bigger house.
How long you been in that house?
Since 2000.
Okay, so 24 years. Okay. In that house, how come you're still in that house? Like, why did you? And I'm asking you for as a baby boomer.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So let's talk about why I had the house. Why did I move from a condo into the house? Because we wanted to start a family.
Okay.
And we wanted to adopt a child, and so we needed more than a condo. And so we bought the next step up from a condo, which were these new starter houses that were in the 200s or low 200s, and typical small 1,500 square foot house where you start your family.
By the way, just ballpark. What's the value of the house now?
About $1 million.
Okay, you bought it for 200.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
250. Yeah.
For 20 years ago.
Yeah.
In South County.
Yeah.
And it's now $1 million.
Yeah, a little over $1 million.
Okay, so again, going back to that affordable housing conversation we had. Okay,
right.
all right, yeah, go ahead.
So you asked me, so that's why we did it, and we adopted a daughter, and we raised her there, and she went to school, and it was a wonderful thing. Now she's off and married and has her own family, and so two things should have happened in the northern event. We should have moved up when I had the opportunity. We could have. There were some times we thought, well, we'd have to move to maybe Temecula or someplace else. Mm-hmm. We could have got sold this house, take the couple $100,000 we made, and roll it into a bigger house. Mm-hmm. We thought about that a couple times, but we'd have to move out of the community, and we didn't want to do that.
Why?
A couple of reasons. Jobs were here, but mostly I fell in love with Orange County, and we all did. The weather is perfect.
Would you say familiarity with your community?
It felt like home. I can't explain it, but I'd lived up in L.A., I'd lived in other states, I'd lived around the thing, and they all were nice, but I didn't see myself.
Well, and the reason I'm asking these questions as you tell the story is because some of these answers that you're giving me are actually indicative exactly of why people are not moving, like why people did not basically sell their house in Orange County and go to the desert.
Orange County is like
the
the Three Bears. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right.
Okay.
And Temecula can be hotter. It's further away from amenities and restaurants and the beach and
when would have that been, Paul? Like in that 20-year period, when would that have been that you would have considered doing that?
Probably about halfway through, early 2000s. Because the house was small for there were two of us and a child, and it was okay. And then we thought maybe we'll get a bigger yard, we'll have a bigger thing. All that seemed appealing. We went out and looked at places in Temecula, and we could have bought one. Because we've made now 200. Our house is worth 400.
Right, you had some equity in it, yeah.
And so we could have flipped it over, but it was trading. We all looked at each other and said, really, better schools, better weather, more amenities, like it. Lived here for a while. Hey, I don't know. So we missed that move up, and then things got away from it. No. Okay. But things got away from us then. Then now. Suddenly, I can't buy that house in Orange County because it's $700,000 or $800,000. Now it's $1.5 million or $2 million. We looked at some properties. I wish I had stretched myself and done that because we could have bought a $400,000 house that's now worth $3 million or something. Mm-hmm. So we didn't see that acceleration happening.
Especially in South County. I mean, for the longest time, we kind of dragged down there.
Oh yeah, this was you could buy a house because they were and there was tons of new stuff going up. So
correct.
They're building stuff as fast as they could throw it up. South County didn't exist hardly 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Ladera, Rancho Santa Margarita, inland on San Juan.
All that. Submission Viejo was the first one we built.
Right.
So all of that we saw happen, and we said we bought into it. And I'll tell you the really funny thing. I've said this on the show a long time ago. I'm sure you've forgotten. I tell the story all the time. I came to California and lived in Hollywood, up in the Hollywood Hills when I worked in the entertainment industry. That's right. Fell in love, got married, and started life up in that area. And I thought, I'm never leaving this little bubble. This is the world I live in. I love this world. Right. And once or twice went down to what was then new Mission Viejo because I was thinking, well, we can't buy up in Hollywood and it's old and funky and whatever. And so we went down to Mission Viejo to look at these new housing tracts they were throwing up fast in Orange County here. And
I mean, that's a culture shock, man. You're going from
oh,
Hollywood to
oh,
South County.
and I remember going down there, and I said, "Why would anybody live here? They all look like cookie cutter. They all look the same, and all this stuff is just one big generic blob, and there's no character to it, and there's not the little funky neighborhood market and the thing and the restaurant, all the things we loved in Hollywood." Now, cut to years go by, we get a condo down in Orange County, and then we start a family in Orange County. And I drove back up to the Vine Street Bar and Grill on Vine Street, jazz. I'm a big jazz fan. And one night we're up there, and we go in, and great show. I'm thinking, oh, this is what I can't get in Orange County, but I'm missing this. I feel like I'm in New York again here. And as we walk out, a city bus pulls up in front of us, and there's a gang of kids beating the hell out of another kid on the bus. The city driver is enclosed in a bulletproof thing, and he doesn't know what to do. And these kids are smashing in, and he beeps the horn, looks at a cop, and the cop runs the other way because he's going to go get help. He's not going to get on the bus and try and take this on. And I thought to myself, I grabbed my wife, and I ran to the car, and I got home. We kissed the ground. I said, never again, not going back up there. Holy. And so we got home. We said, thank goodness. Look, it's safe. It's wide streets. It's all this, the safest cities in America and all this stuff here. And I thought, how have I changed my reaction? When I saw this at 29, I said, horrible. When I saw it at 39, I said, heaven, home.
So could it be that that's when we started to isolate ourselves from the rest of the people and not have diversity?
Yeah.
Is when we started moving into these subdivisions that are basically more pristine and more controlled?
No question about it. And sometimes I push back and balk because I have fights with my community group about their HOAs, and they got to get a certain window, and I can't paint it this color, and I got to do this. They're always jumping on me for something I'm not doing. I say, you can't do that. You can't tell me this is America. I'm a libertarian. Can't tell me what to do. And yet we kind of like it because then it enforces similarity, and it keeps change, and there isn't a purple house in the block, and that might, or nobody's repairing their car in the front, and all these things I saw in Hollywood all the time. You just accept that. There was no zoning when they built all this stuff in Hollywood. There's a mansion next door to a hovel. It's just all on top of each other here.
So you didn't move. You're still there, right? It's now years later.
Right.
You said your daughter's not in the house anymore. She's
No.
got her family and everything, right?
Right.
So where are you at in terms of decisions regarding your housing?
We should be moving. And I'll tell you why. Because it's upstairs, downstairs, and that'll get harder. A couple times I've tripped in the middle of the night or whatever here. I shouldn't be in a multi-level house anymore. My wife has tripped or whatever a couple times. Not just you get older and it's the middle of the night and you're half asleep and you shouldn't be going up and down the stairs. I'm sorry. It's the right size again because it's just a two-people house really. So it's
Well, if you have two closets above each other, I can put an elevator in your house.
okay. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So some of that, but we don't want to leave. Now we have grandkids in the area, so we don't want to leave and go to the desert and get away from that. And that desert lifestyle that was designed to be the, my wife would describe it sort of as Stepford Wives life. Everybody is sitting around as one continuous cocktail hour, one continuous tea time, one continuous mahjong game.
Yeah.
That which we grew up in the Midwest. That's what everybody's doing. They moved to Florida, most of them, to do that.
Yeah.
And so some of them to Arizona. That's where they built all these Del Webbs, and some in California at the end. But that doesn't seem appealing to my generation. It does to me a little bit.
Well,
but
do you is part of that lack of appeal or hesitance is the fact that you would not have the age diversity?
no, I don't know.
What is
My
it?
wife would say that she doesn't want to be just around old people. But in a certain sense, there's a comfort because it's all the tribe. We're all going through the same things. It's the
Right.
same conversation about your aches and pains and operations and other things.
Well, that could be that could be a comfort thing. It could be a thing that you basically absolutely do not want.
And there are more services out in the desert. There are more hospitals. There's
Yeah.
more of everything to serve your needs as you get older. It's easier to get around. There's no traffic congestion like there is here half the time. It's still not LA, but it's not.
So what's the
all desert.
hesitation?
I'd say it's the grandkids for the most part. because then you're farther away from your.
And how old are your grandkids?
One's 10 and one's 4.
So what happens when they get to be teenagers?
That's the question I keep asking, because now they don't want to hang around Grandpa
Yeah.
that much anymore. I think that's when the moment of truth will come, and that's about when. So I'm looking at 10 years away, 5-10 years away, and and how long do I work, and how long does this business run, and how long, all those things I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry, Paul. I'm not picking on you. I'm just using you as
No,
an
I'm
example
happy to
because
be
when we
example.
started this show, I mean, years ago, you even said, I said, hey, yeah, we're starting a show on baby boomers, and I've got a built-in baby boomer in the room, right? It's
I'm
the
the
poster
voice.
child baby boomer.
So I think I think I've answered my own question. We don't know how we're Chicken Little or whatever that image
Yeah.
is where you stick your head in the sand. We can't look ahead. We won't look ahead. We don't know how to look ahead. We're scared to look ahead, and it's hard to look ahead. So we just struggle along where it is, and then we complain about the things we don't like.
So let me put a little bit more scare in you then, okay? Because this is another thing that happens. Now you're basically saying, okay, you're there for the kids, for the grandkids, which
Right.
I totally get. My parents did exactly the same thing, right?
Right.
You're fortunate enough to have your daughter within a distance that you can actually have that
That's a
part
rarity.
of their life,
Yes.
right? Because it goes back to that affordable housing
Every
thing.
weekend we watch them.
Right. I mean, if they're living 30 minutes, 45 minutes away, you're not going to see them. Now it's a different scenario. But okay. But now you're older. Now you're in a situation where you need the assistance and the support,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Now, granted, nowadays you have Uber. You didn't have Uber 15 years ago.
Right. Or telemedicine.
Right, or
or something like that.
telemedicine, because thank you, COVID, right? With the, that stuff is now more regular and available. But that being said, the support coming from like a group or an entity or social circle or family, right? So then you move to the desert. What happens when you need that support?
I think two things would happen. One, we'd be farther away from our only daughter, so that would be difficult. We'd be 2 hours away instead of 20 minutes away. But at the same hand, we'd have more friends. I'll tell you the one thing that you didn't bring up. I didn't have many friends left. This is horrible to say. And I read an article that many men my age have very few friends left because they've died.
Well, and it's super critical to understand that you have to be active in the development of your social circles as you get older.
Right.
Because if you're just dependent on what you have accumulated along the way, like you said, people pass away, you lose people,
Or they
people
move or
whatever, right?
yeah,
And to think that, oh, well, that's just the way it is, you're not accounting for the importance of that social support
Right.
as you get older, because the loneliness is an epidemic right now.
Right.
Regardless of age, by the way, it's not just for people that are older, but loneliness is an epidemic. It makes you more vulnerable. You're susceptible to scams. You don't have the filter that's around you to look out for your
Absolutely.
best interest. So again, we go back to this sort of affordability thing. If you don't have the people that are vested in the community, that grew up in the community, whose family dynamic and structure is in the community, and seniors and older people that bought in at a lower price, guess what? There's also a financial reality of why they're staying in their homes.
Right.
That's their piggy bank that they're hoping can basically
It's mine.
support them
Yeah.
for their needs as they get older. You sell that house, you basically move to the desert. You better make sure that what you have in there is leverageable with a reverse mortgage or whatever.
Yeah,
if
right.
you had not saved enough to basically care for yourself.
And I didn't.
Right. So having family around, having your kids that were raised in those communities be able to afford to stay in those communities, there's another intrinsic value. They are able to be part of the support system for seniors as they get older and people that are their parents and family, because they are now nearby.
Right. But I don't think it. So the purpose.
As much as you don't want your kids to take care of you. I mean,
No.
that's right. But the reality of the reality is that is who's there.
Yeah, if your parents had stayed in Dubai or wherever they lived last, or Kuwait or someplace, or Iraq or something, they would have missed all those years. And your development, your sister's development, your
Well, I would have had to make a decision. I mean, I remember making a decision when I was in 2000, when I had an opportunity to actually go to Dubai. Okay, and my parents were already in California; they had already moved, right? And I had to make a decision. If I had gone to Dubai in 2000, 23 years ago, there's no limit to what success, financial success or career success I would have been able to achieve, right? Not that I didn't do it here, but I would have at some point or the other had to face the reality of the crossroads. Would have had to take that fork in the road.
Right.
Do I go and live near my parents so I could be there for them as they get older?
As you were.
Or do I basically maintain a distance? And believe you me, being away has its pluses and minuses when it comes to elder parents, and being close by has its pluses and minuses. But again, you got to be honest with yourself. Like it would have been very hard for me to be far away from them while they were going through this stuff, and I will forever be grateful that I was nearby when they needed me, when my sister was nearby, and hats off to her
Me
for all
too.
that she did. Yeah,
Me too. And
you had the same thing with your
I didn't.
parents.
And my parents chased after me and came out here finally because I wasn't going back to the Midwest where they were. And had we not made that decision, our lives would have been very different, very difficult. My mother had Parkinson's, my dad had stroke, and other sorts of things and I'm an only child, so they had nobody else to rely upon to do that. And as much as I didn't think I wanted to do that, it was important to do that, and it was a gift to be able to do that.
Okay, so we didn't get Chef Pascal on Zoom. You've been looking.
No, I looked. He
Okay,
wasn't on
all right,
Zoom.
okay.
Yeah.
So I will. We're gonna try to end. We're gonna end the show now. But thank you again for letting us kind of just have this sort of session of talking about the importance of not only community conversations, but also talking about stuff that's not necessarily
Linear.
pleasant. Yeah, linear and pleasant. No, there's no such thing as linear on this show. and I promise we will figure out a time to have either Chef Pascal in the studio, or we might even try to do a remote from his location in San Juan. And a shout out for UCI Medical for all the skill and the care that they provided for Chef Pascal in helping him navigate his cancer. And it's important for us to all be there for each other. I mean,
It is a community.
It is a community.
And why do we just isolate ourselves with in our own house, in our own neighborhood, with our own family, with our own friends, and then we blast and say those people hate the world.
I think we convince ourselves that it's just the nature of our reality, right? I will challenge you and me and people who are listening to think that it's not necessarily the nature of our reality. Whether it's and we're coming up on an election, man. I mean, it gets heightened right now, right, every 4 years, but it's not the nature of our reality. It's the nature of our choice to either continue to be open and communicative and respectful, even though we may disagree, or not to. And honestly, I don't have any time for somebody who's just going to basically come and talk at me. But if you want to talk to me, and you want me to talk to you, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Not to steal from Fraser, by the way.
All right, gotta go.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Paul, for having us. Chef Pascal, I will reach out to you, and we will make it happen, my friend. Sorry to have missed you today, but looking forward to seeing you soon.